Welcome to the Homesteading for Beginners podcast. This is Mona Weathers, your host. I tend to talk about the weather a lot. A few weeks ago, I brought up the weather to one of my daughters, and she laughed and said, "Why do you always talk about the weather?" And I told her it's because it's a big part of my life as a homesteader and a horse owner. My daily life changes based on the weather and what it's doing. I also like to talk about the weather because it's a universal small talk topic, right? You can have, a nice sunny day, 70 degrees and sunny, and you can go up to someone and say, "Wow, it's such a nice day, isn't it?" And I know some people don't like small talk, but that's the kind of small talk I can get into because I always have an opinion about the weather, whether it's nice or not nice or whatever, So if it's like raining and windy, you can say, "Oh boy, the rain is coming down, isn't it?" Like you can have this conversation, this interaction with people because we all kind of have some sort of opinion. Either we like it or we don't. So it's a good way for small talk. So I do use it as that. But it also just has to do with my life. My life has to do with, delicate plants that need to be tended to and older horses that need to be cared for. And so the topic of the weather just is something I think about a lot. And I want to share some of that with you to give you some ideas and to maybe make you not feel so, maybe you feel like you're obsessed about the weather, looking at your phone apps or checking the weather to see what it is, but it's really kind of a normal part of this because we go outside a lot. We have things that we have to do, and you could be doing this even without homesteading. If you go outside a lot, you're probably checking the weather a lot too. Or if you have children that go outside a lot, you're probably checking the weather for them as well. Yeah, so I'm going to share some of the things, some fun facts about me and the weather and how I tend to pay attention to what's going on and the reasons why. Here are a few fun facts about my relationship with the weather. Okay, so I have 3 weather apps on my phone. I don't know if everybody else does, but I have 3. And I check one of them at least twice a day, and the others I'll check at the same time. All 3 of them, I'll check all 3 of them. If there's some sort of intense storm and I need to get like a good understanding of what's happening, I'll check the radar, I'll check the hourly, I'll check the temperatures. And this is what I do almost daily. At least I check the one app every day. And I wake up and I check the app, and anytime I don't do this, I seem to totally things get out of hand. Because I was like, oh no, I didn't check the weather to see what was supposed to happen tonight. Now, this doesn't happen year round. There's parts of the year that I don't do this because it's not as drastic. Right now in Georgia, we can go from 70 degrees in the 70s to below freezing in the same 24-hour period. And we also have tornado watches that we need to watch for sometimes, and it rains a lot here, and the humidity levels are high. So there's just a lot of things that can happen here that I just need to pay attention to. So that's another fact about me, is that our weather here in Georgia can change a lot in one day. And I also have older horses, which I've talked about my horses here before, but they are older, and to try to keep them from losing weight and things like that, I pay attention to the weather, especially when it's cold, because the more they have to work to keep themselves more warm, the more fat they burn and the less easier it is for them to keep the fat that they need because they're older horses. So I tend to blanket and put sheets on during the certain times of the year that I feel that they need it. So I have to really pay attention because, like I said before, it can go from 70s to below freezing really fast, and I can't put a blanket on in the 70s. I have to know when that time period of when the weather changes enough. So sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's very day by day with the horses. And I have this routine with my own horses. Not everybody does this. I'm also a gardener. As a gardener, you know that there's certain times of year that you really need to pay attention to what's happening, because if you've put delicate plants out, then they might freeze and they're gone. Like there's some plants that you really want to wait or as long as possible before you put them out, or at least have a plan to protect them if the weather is getting cold. Like cucumbers is one of those that just does not do well if it gets too cold. It's probably all the squashes, I'd imagine, but the cucumbers just came out as one that I remember having to really wait until, at least in California, I would wait like June, because it was that we could get freezing temperatures earlier than that. And you can cover things, and if the temperature doesn't drop too low, if it's covered with some plastic or something like that, then it'll be fine. But as a gardener, that's just one of those things that you really need to pay attention to, and know that things need to get covered even if it's too hot. There's times when things are too hot and the sun is beating down too much on certain areas, and you need to make sure that they're shaded. So that's why I keep track of the weather as well. So those are just some facts about me and why my relationship with weather is important. We also have this year a rabbit, and rabbits tend to get overheated easily. So in the winter, I didn't really worry about her too much. But in the summer, I'm going to need to make sure that she has a fan or something to keep the airflow, because we have very humid summers here. So there's different animals respond differently to the heat and the cold. The chickens seem to do pretty well year round with the weather here, so I don't really have to do anything special. Sometimes in the summer I will give them some frozen treat if it's really hot, but they tend to do pretty well. So those are some of the things that you might want to consider if you have chickens or rabbits or any plants that you're planting. The larger animals, most of them do pretty well. It's the horses that can be pretty sensitive to things, and they can go bad fast. Most of the other animals know how to keep themselves cool and warmed, as long as you just have shelter for them. So the weather might be different where you are, and this, you might have the drastic changes that we have here. We had some drastic changes in one day in our homestead in California also. It would do the same thing, be in the 70s, and then at night it would be below freezing or something. So things can change. Wind is a factor that I didn't mention, but we always had to be sure that we were paying attention to the wind in California, and as well as here. Sometimes it gets pretty windy here as well. So if you work outside a lot, you just need to be aware of the snowstorms and all of the things, right? The tornadoes, and depending on where you are, there could be a reason that you need to just pay attention to the weather. Mostly this episode is just to help you to become aware that you need to start paying attention to the weather if you're a homesteader, just because there's different things that can happen, and it can happen pretty quickly in different areas of the world. So that is all I have for you today. This was just a little shorty episode to get you thinking about the weather. And I'm Mona Weathers, and I will talk to you again soon.